Hey everyone, this is Ted Farrell. This is welcome to another super exciting episode of All Things Litigation Funding. We have a mega panel today from Saul Ewing. We are going to talk about their litigation funding practice group. We're going to talk about contingent fees, how they look at risk, the work they do. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our panelists for a couple quick introductions, and then we'll get into it. Casey, it looks like you're in the top square there, so why don't you go first and we'll work down.
Yeah, sure, Ted. Thanks a lot for having us on the show. So I'm Casey Grabenstein. I am a partner at Saul Ewing in our Chicago office. I am a commercial litigator, and I am, along with Brian, one of the co-founders of our practice group, which has a very long name, which is titled the Litigation Finance and Contingent Litigation Risk Insurance Practice Group, which is quite a mouthful. We need to find a way to shorten it.
You guys need it. You need an acronym. That's what you need. We're going to work on an acronym.
Yep, for sure. So that's me. Brian, you want to?
Yeah, sure. Good. Thanks, Ted, for having us, and good to see everybody. Yeah, Brian Mahalik, I'm a partner in our Chicago office. I also am one of the chairs of Saul Ewing's intellectual property group. And Casey and I kind of divide the world into two halves. I do all things intellectual property, including patent litigations, which seems to be the majority of my day-to-day, and Casey handles the commercial side along with Kayleigh. So yeah, it's good to be here. I think we're going to have a nice chat and some interesting discussions. So thanks again.
Hi, everyone. Also very excited to be here. Kind of a dork in that some of these things get me all excited. I'm a partner in our Baltimore office. As Casey and Brian said, I do the commercial cases with them from a finance perspective, as well as some of the insurance due diligence work. And I also serve as a committee member on the firm's contingent fee committee, assessing the firm's position on funded cases, as well as all contingent fee, full contingency fee, and partial.
All right. So look, and one of the reasons I thought it would be great to have you all on is obviously you all are really kind of touching all the points along the way with litigation funding. But one question I'd like to throw out, and look, because we have three guests, not everyone has to answer every question, but this is usually sort of interesting for certain listeners. I mentioned this before, but there's people that listen to this who themselves are looking to break into the business or to have a role within their firm within litigation funding. And what I think can be sort of interesting is, what was the first time you were sort of aware of a funding deal? Like, did you work on a funding deal, do a pitch, something like that? And that's going to be, I'm going to throw that out to the floor there.
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in. The first time I really heard about litigation funding or got smarter with it is when one of my colleagues left the firm and went to work for a funder, and he really sort of explained the concept to me. And I'll say that it probably
are we going to give him the shout out, or are we going to make this like
it was Justin Mallison at Longford Capital, who is a former colleague of mine at Jenner and Block. And we sat down and talked about it, and he explained it to me. I have to say, it took 3 or 4 tries to explain it for me to fully grasp it. And he walked me through it. And I guess the eureka moment for me was when I realized that the way that this is structured is in a way that everyone has skin in the game, that's incentivized to go forward, to get the maximum recovery, and it really can benefit everybody. And that was kind of the eureka moment for me. And I think the first time I really heard about this concept.
Yeah, and I kind of mirror that too. My kind of eureka moment was when we were hired at Saul Ewing to buy a litigation funder to basically look over a case. This was a patent case that they were thinking of investing in or thinking of funding. And it was very much through that lens and that hat that we were wearing at that time as diligence counsel, where, you got to do all kind of the interesting and fun stuff and kicking the tires on a potential litigation and analyzing what the actual risk profile looked like for that case. And that was kind of the eureka moment, because we realized, this is a thing. There's an opportunity here, and there's an opportunity to help our clients out to bring meritorious and strong cases, with Saul Ewing representing them as trial counsel. And funding was really the mechanism and the bridge to that end. So it all started kind of with the diligence end, and then has matriculated to where we're at today.
And I'll just kind of round out there that Casey brought me in on a pitch for an antitrust case, and needed some due diligence on the injury rule versus the discovery rule for this particular case. So it was during COVID. I remember I had a couple cases fly off my docket pretty quickly in March and April of 2020. So I did a huge deep dive into every single jurisdiction and circuit and how they apply the discovery rule versus the injury rule in order to defend our position on the statute of limitations for a case. And it kind of just took off from there. You know, I'd echo everything Casey and Brian said, that it's a really interesting space to be in. I think it's an advantage to be able to pitch that to our clients that maybe have certain concerns about funding the litigation and, attorney's fees, but it's meritorious. And I've only gotten smarter about the different tools and products that are offered. And it's kind of like a fun puzzle to figure out the case and the product that fit best.
Right. And Kayleigh, I think what is kind of interesting is, so you sit on the contingent fee committee. So, sometimes you guys are saying, do we as a firm want to spend $2 million on experts and do $8 million work without getting it? And so I always find it interesting when you realize that, the diligence that you guys are helping a funder do, Kayleigh, I'm assuming is basically the same way you look at a case if you all were going to do it, right? I mean, I think there's a lot of overlap there.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's in those situations on the committee, I'm the funder, right? I'm the one that's making the decision whether or not we take the case. And in that role, I feel like I routinely draw on my experience in the funding world when we are pitching diligence cases or when we are evaluating as due diligence counsel, and kind of do the balancing act of, okay, let's assess the merits, right? What are the likelihood of success? Do we have attorneys that are qualified? Can our attorneys handle this? What's the opportunity for a quick resolution? And, how does that impact with damages, both in terms of the firm's ability to carry the not being paid on attorney time and expenses. Like, expenses are usually a huge consideration when we are evaluating whether or not to take on a case. And it's helpful because when I'm doing the diligence on a funder's case or when we're pitching a case, I think, would I take on this case? Would I recommend this case to my executive committee and to my firm as a case that Saul Ewing would bear the risk on? And there have been times where, we've incorporated that into our diligence work, saying like, this is a case we think we would carry the risk if we were the ones that were taking it.
Right. That's interesting. And, Casey, I want to get back to something that I think you said, at least first. Of course, I let you talk first, so you got to make all the good points. But anyway, you all were talking about a way to offer an option to your clients, and something that has really surprised me, and I'm just interested in your thoughts, is it's not just, the startup that had their trade secrets stolen that couldn't pay for litigation. I'm finding more and more that, companies, with the ability to pay rack rates and all the expenses, still want to look at funding. And I'm just sort of interested in, the client reaction sort of across the spectrum of ability to pay when you say, hey, we're going to offer you these options. It's sort of, it's kind of up to you, sort of what the uptake has been, even with clients who otherwise could pay, but have better uses for their money, they might think.
Yeah. I mean, folks have been receptive to this. I mean, pretty much across the board. Brian and I are working on a few things now with companies that could afford, to pay our fees, but they appreciate the opportunity to have an alternative vehicle to do this. So it's not just small companies. It's not just, startups that are receptive to this. And this is what I'll say, just from like a business development standpoint, like it is so refreshing to be able to bring these ideas to clients. And 9 times out of 10, it's not a good fit for a variety of reasons. And but they always appreciate the outreach. And like I don't think I've had one client say, no, we're not interested. Don't bring us this kind of stuff. They're all like really interested. They appreciate that we're thinking about them and trying to do things for them that aren't costing them money. So the reception to this, I think, on the client side has been very positive, even when it doesn't go anywhere. It's just another way to say like, hey, we're thinking of you, and this may be an opportunity for you. So I think it's been pretty well received across the board in my experience.
Yeah, it's great to pick up the phone and talk to your client. You get a call as as in-house counsel, you get a call from your litigation attorney, and it's usually bad news, right? You've been sued, or this is a problem. It's great to pick up the phone and be like, listen, we've identified a potential claim that's out there. You might find it interesting. This is how litigation funding may fit in and be a benefit to the company. And to Casey's point, there's no one size fits all approach. Some of our clients interested in litigation funding are smaller in nature. Some are huge billion-dollar clients that are interested as well, and they're interested in how to reduce their risk profile on certain things and find alternative revenue streams. So it's really something that seems to be out there for people or companies of all shapes and sizes.
Right, and so and I remember when I first met you guys talking about this. So there's the educating the clients, but you work in a very large law firm. You've got a lot of offices, you have partners, you have practice groups. I'm interested to hear you all talk about, how you kind of educated even your peers within the firm. First of, we want to do some funded cases, but now, look, you are one of the larger law firms that basically is out there saying we have a litigation finance practice. Like, we are telling people we do this, right? So I'm just interested, like, how, and again, I'm not trying to get into like the internal debate at the firm, but just like, what was it like getting people? Because Casey, you brought up a point that I thought was interesting, and I hear from a lot of people is, Justin had to explain to me 3 times how this works, right? You pay our fees. And so I'm just interested, how you all have really educated your partners to get to this point where you're really, publicly facing, and of course, in the business, recognized by everyone as being a real player here.
Brian, do you want to go first? Do you want me to?
No, I'll take a stab at it. Yeah, I mean, internally, like anytime something is new, right? Especially new to a law firm, there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of confusion. Wait
till you guys hear about AI. I'll tell you about that offline. That's going to be a big one. That's going to be a big one for sure.
Right. It's scary. It's new. We don't know what this is, right? We know hourly. Lawyers know hourly rates. That's the tried and true method. So when Casey and I first started kind of knocking on doors after we had these kind of eureka moments and educating, our colleagues on litigation funding, there were a lot of questions, and there was a lot of, explaining and what about this and how does this work? And, ultimately at the end of the day, it took, various presentations, more than a couple meetings with colleagues across all of Saul Ewing's, many offices to explain why this matters, why it's important to our clients, why it could be really helpful to our clients. And, I think for the most part, there's been significant buy-in by the firm to, when we first started knocking on those doors to where we're at now, where people at our firm and in our management have been not just supportive, but actually embracing litigation funding as a way to better serve our clients. And, that's been a testament to just the caliber of folks at our law firm, to the innovative and flexible approach to making sure that our clients have the best service and opportunities as are possible, and to make sure that we're continuing to evolve as a law firm, along with things like litigation funding and other components that can be associated with it.
Yeah, it's something I'm really proud about, Ted. I mean, we basically did a road show and sort of getting the word out and talking. There were a few particular opportunities that we were looking at and that we thought we might have the clientele that would match them. And so we ended up talking to a lot of people, and really describing it as a roadshow is almost the best way I can describe it. It was a lot of conversations. And I'm proud of our firm for, there was a little bit of reluctance at first, as there is with a lot of the AmLaw 200, to sort of consider this as a revenue source. You see that trend kind of changing now, but I'm proud of the conversations we had, and I am really impressed with our leadership, who kept an open mind and really turned this into, as Brian mentioned, a priority for the firm that has culminated in some good outcomes this year, and hopefully will in the future.
And I'd just add that I think it's a continuing process. Like Casey and Brian did a great job with their roadshow and getting the word out to a lot of the partnership and getting buy-in from leadership, and the internal group. The long name that Casey has already said that we need an acronym for, has only grown, right? Like I got involved, and then I've gotten other associates involved, and then they want to speak on certain things. They've seen the benefit of it. They're trying to use it to market to their clients. And it's continuing the momentum. I've been in multiple conversations with like our transactional lawyers, where they'll say, yeah, my client has this securities case where the damages probably aren't super significant, and they don't want to fund our fees, but it's probably not big enough to take on a contingent fee.
Right.
And then, we can educate them on all the other products that are offered in this world and bundling. And if we have 3 other cases like this, all of a sudden our damages are significant, and we can broker deals. And I think it's continuing the education and the excitement, and the results that the firm has seen are only emphasizing that.
Yeah. I'll just, I think doing, due diligence projects is kind of like where we started off. It was a really good way to see the anatomy of a litigation funding deal, and sort of how it all works as sort of a trial run before making the plunge into actually, bringing funded cases. It was, that was really important, I think, for our firm to see how this all works.
Well, I think one of the first things you would learn is, opponents of litigation funding want to say, oh, they just fund frivolous cases. And I get it, because every defendant in every case says that every case is frivolous. So that is what it is. But I think that, you all are in such an interesting spot, because Kayleigh, you could say, well, we just spent 6 weeks and wrote a 35-page memo. And by the way, our counterpart at the litigation funder, which has $2 billion in AUM, was a partner at this AmLaw 100 firm and had done this. So I think that having looked at those, really could disabuse of the notion that this is just some fly-by-night business to do, stupid made-up cases to shake people down. that just is not the reality of the business. So I'm guessing that probably did help you all, having, again, been under the hood.
Yeah, you have like 2 or 3 rounds in addition to what the firm does, right? The firm does their own due diligence. Then, I should say, the attorneys in the firm do their own due diligence. Then they need to present it to the litigation funder, who will do their own due diligence, and maybe sometimes even outsource it to a law firm to do due diligence. And then we need to pass it by Kayleigh and her team and the contingency fee committee. You have multiple levels of scrutiny on these types of cases that if you miss just one layer, it's not going to go forward. So, if anything, it speaks to the seriousness and the strength of these types of cases. And I think it's actually a benefit to having multiple eyes and multiple different perspectives. Take a look at these cases before, multiples of millions of dollars are invested into them.
Right. And Kayleigh, I wanted to, I also was thinking about something you just said, and I think this is one of the great selling points. So you were talking about how, more junior lawyers in the firm are now being proactive, and they're taking speaking roles, and they're maybe looking with their clients. And, what I always sort of thought is the big challenge for the newly minted partner, and especially in a firm like yours. And I say that because if there's a, Fortune 500 company, right? That your firm is not conflicted. Someone else has done the work. So you're never going to get, you're never going to get the origination credit. And, your peers as a younger partner are going to be the GCs of smaller companies that couldn't afford you. And so this idea of, it's like, now you've made partner, go build a $5 million book. This is just another way to say, we're going to empower you all to try and do that.
Yeah, 100%. I think that, we've talked internally, Casey, Brian, and I, about different ways to continue to get the message and to continue to build excitement. And we have done and are contemplating future like whiteboarding sessions where we can talk about cases that are interesting, how to get new cases in. And when we were planning one, I remember walking around the halls and going to all of the junior partners being like, look, I know it's annoying to have to sit in like a 2-hour non-billable thing, but I'm telling you, this could be the way that you make equity partner, because if you get 1 or 2 of these cases in and you show you have a pipeline, you can really leverage your contacts. And I think it is one of the most beneficial ways to try to build a book of business as well.
Yeah. And I think generally, if you're representing a smaller mid-sized company in what for them is a bet the company litigation, even though it's not the biggest thing in the world, what are the chances they're not going to listen to you when you say, I'd love you to meet our partner in this office who does ERISA work, and we'd really like to do that for you. And these are our employees, right? So there's also kind of that idea of, we helped you out of a jam. We use litigation finance to help you do it. And again, you might have a new client that also grows into a more traditional client that would be able to, pay you all, at the rates you deserve. But, it's just, small companies for day-to-day stuff sort of can't do it.
Yep. Just another great way to stay top of mind with clients as well. Like you said, you bring them an opportunity for funding. Maybe they bring you future work, or it's just another touch that you have because you're constantly working on the case.
Right. All right. So I want to ask you, and we've talked about this a couple of times, but I do want to come back to it. What has been the reaction in the market of you all saying, we have a litigation finance group? I mean, I'm just interested in sort of like the feedback you all got by making a real like public and really like, thoughtful splash into, we're here to do this.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I mean, I think it's been great. I think, the reception has been good from the people that we've spoken with. They're happy that we're out there. We're at the conferences. We're talking with folks. I think it's been a really good effort. I kind of, I think it reminds me a little bit of the cannabis practice. I know I'm going in a really different direction here, but like there was a time when not every firm had a cannabis practice, right? It was just 4 or 5 years ago, and then some firms started saying, "Hey, we're going to do this," and then now everyone has a cannabis practice. So, I'm proud that we're out there and hopefully a little bit ahead of the curve. But I do expect you're going to see more and more firms doing this work, or they're doing the work, but publicly, stating that they're doing the work.
Right. Yeah. Our goal really, there's a certain opacity, at least there was, to litigation finance. What is it? How does it work? I don't understand it. And really our goal of forming this group and to have it outwardly facing was to demystify some of those issues and to speak openly about how litigation funding, what we do with respect to litigation funding, how it can provide better options for our clients as well. So that was really the purpose of forming the group, both internally, but also having that outward presence too, to help facilitate those discussions and demystify things a little bit.
Okay. All right. Well, look, I have time for 2 more questions, and everybody gets these. So the first question is, I mean, every guest gets it. You don't have to answer it, but what do you, and then we start touching, but what do you all think is sort of like the biggest misconception about the business? And I'm maybe not just talking about like, the Chamber of Commerce says it's for frivolous cases, but like, what do you think once people get under the hood, what do you think is sort of different than sort of the outside sort of view of how all this works?
So I'll speak. You know, the criticism that I've heard the most is that there is this conception that if a litigation funder is going to invest millions of dollars in a case, then they're going to want some type of control element to how the litigation works. And I suppose that possibly could be the case, but I can tell you with the folks that we work with, 100% of the time at least, that control element is not there for the litigation funder. Rather, the control element for the litigation is between the client or the claim holder and Saul Ewing, and the client and claim holder have full autonomy to make the decisions with respect to the litigation under, you know, our guidance. And people just don't seem to believe us when we say that, because they don't understand or they can't contemplate how somebody would invest millions of dollars and then just have their hands off the steering wheel, so to speak. But that actually truly is the case, at least with the people we work with. And that's the way we prefer things as well.
Anybody else want to chime in?
Yeah, sure. I do. I mean, a couple things come to mind, but you already touched on one of these, and that's, I think the biggest misconception for me is that litigation funding is causing this proliferation of like frivolous lawsuits. I mean, you know, if you think about we talked about this a little bit, but all the due diligence that this stuff goes through, what litigation funding does is it ensures that you're bringing a very, you know, merit-based claim, because everyone's looking at this. You know, these aren't bad cases. These are really good cases that need to see the light of day, and need to be litigated. So I think that's a big misconception. I mean, I also think there's a little bit of misconceptions around all these disclosure rules. There's so much fighting over, you know, whether you're going to get discovery into the funder, into the you know, the fact that the case is funded, and so on and so forth. And, you know, the approach I think that we've had is, yeah, we don't want to disclose that if we don't have to, but if we do, it basically means that, you know, it just tells you we have a really strong case that everyone's
like,
looking
so
at.
what? Yeah, so what? I agree.
And so I am continuously surprised by how much litigation there is over this issue, because like, if you're the defendant, what are you gonna get when you figure out that the case is funded, and what's the end game? Like, okay, now you know it's a really strong case. And so there's just so much litigation over that issue that I think that folks are under the misconception that maybe funders are afraid to be disclosed, or maybe the parties don't want to disclose it. I mean, yeah, you want to keep business terms confidential, but it's really a point of strength. So,
well, I always said, like, you know, when I'm, you know, king of the world, it's like, if you want the funding agreement and you want all emails about the funding and you want everything in the budget, I need to see the defense firm's engagement letter, their success fee. I need their budget by milestone, and I want to see where their settlement authority is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure I'm going to get it too. I'm sure I'm going to get that. Right. I'm sure that's coming any day now. But I think, you know, look, there is a piece of this that is, you know, the old adage. And look, I mean, I was a defense lawyer, I was a plaintiff lawyer, but when you're the defendant and your client allegedly did something, anytime in the litigation not talking about that something is a day you're winning, right? So, yeah, I mean, the well was poisoned, but like, how bad was the poisoning? Or a litigation funder might have control over this, right? So I think it is a sideshow. It is a sideshow that drives up cost, which of course is good for any defendant. But I think that it just prolongs litigation. But, you know, Casey, as you said, I mean, yeah, what are you going to get out of the funding agreement? Like, what is it? What does it get you, right? I mean, theoretically, at trial, you'll say, aha, it's not David versus Goliath. It's David, but they had to borrow all this money to fight the case. I mean, come on.
I agree.
Okay. That was my moment of outrage here. So I'm a little more. So, Kayleigh, do you want to chime on this? Because if not,
yeah, I mean, I think I would.
Oh, good.
The beauty of going last is all the good things have already been said. But what I was going to say is to tag on to the point about, you know, bad cases, and this is just, you know, ambulance chasing or whatever, is having been on the due diligence side, like, there are cases you say no to, like, and they could be lucrative cases, but they're just not at the right stage yet. Like, you need to go do more. And I think that was kind of eye-opening for me, amongst the other things everyone said, but is the amount of diligence that goes into these cases. Even if you don't have the added step of a law firm like ours that has the contingent fee committee, just the amount that I've seen, pages upon pages of due diligence memos prepared by outside counsel, and then the funder does a due diligence memo, and then there's a committee, and it's fascinating to see how much goes into each of them. And that's only the cases that they take to the next level, not the cases that have been dismissed along the way.
Yeah, and I think that that can be a double-edged sword, because certainly there are some funders that it's just death by a thousand cuts, but some of the best lawyers that I work with, they love the underwrite, because if somebody points out something they didn't think of, they're thrilled, right? Because they're like, wow, we've been working on this for 6 or 8 months and we've thought of a lot. And by the way, Kayleigh, I think as you sort of hinted, but it's true, the law firms and claimants have to have done a ton of work for everyone to then invest, right, in what you're doing. But, you're getting another lawyer kind of working on your case for you and saying, how are you all thinking about that issue? And look, the diligence is tough and everyone wants everything to close yesterday. But, these cases are fully worked up. Okay. So this is my loaded question, but, you guys are in the lit finance world officially and publicly. So this podcast is really trying to sort of like keep the web going outward. So I need some guest ideas for future podcasts. If there's anybody that you would suggest having on, and you might be doing them a huge favor, or you might be getting them in trouble. I won't make you do 3 amongst you all. I hope you have the Slack channel open and you're quickly maybe deciding to nominate somebody. But here's the thing, like, if there's somebody, and by the way, a ton of people that has a great perspective on the business and could enlighten people, we'll love to see if they come on. So.
Well, if nobody comes immediately to mind for Casey and Brian, I was thinking of something. In addition to the shameless business development, I would make a plug for my husband or similarly situated lawyers who he is an entirely contingent fee lawyer. He does like medical malpractice, civil rights, some key tam, and he's a smaller firm. So unlike us, he doesn't have like the staff and stuff like that. So when he takes a multi-million-dollar civil rights case that has multiple experts and could be really, really costly, that's all a risk to his bottom line. And I probably have to listen to it more than I want to, but I think that would be an interesting perspective that's kind of completely contrary to, similar in concept, but the risk profile is probably a lot different for a small solo practitioner, a small firm versus a big firm from a lawyer perspective.
Well, if you have his contact information, if you could shoot it to me, that would be great, and I'll see if we can get. Okay,
I think so.
Brian and Casey, are you going to abstain, or are you going to put yourselves out there?
So I was recently introduced to the folks at Theo AI, and I don't know if you've heard of them.
That's the one that Rob works with.
Patrick is the guy that I met at.
Right. Yeah.
I think they might be an interesting guest on this. The idea there is potentially using AI as a way to vet potential matters, and I think it's just fascinating because you could use the AI tool, which I think basically comes up with as I understand it, sort of like a score for a case. Essentially. Like, here's what we think about the case based on AI and looking through other dockets and doing other stuff. I think that it can be used in a lot of ways. It can be used people like Kayleigh on the contingency fee committee to say like, hey, is this really actually a good case? Let's run an AI report. It can be used in presenting to a funder, in addition to the memo that we would normally submit about why you should fund this case. You kind of backstop that with an AI score that it can't replace the fundamental work that you would have to do.
Not yet. To be continued. Okay.
To prepare a case, but I think it could be a good backstop for like.
Look. More data to look at, right? You have more ways to look at. I mean, that's just, if it's another tool you can use to look, the lawyers at these funds, right, came from firms like yours. They can underwrite it themselves, but they still want you to weigh in as a double check, right? It's sort of the same idea. And I have been introduced. Okay, so those are two good ones. So thank you all. So if I want to find you all, I'm assuming your law firm has a website, reach out, shoot you guys an email. Like, what's the best way?
Ted, just give us a call. If somebody's watching this, just give us a call. That's our website's up to date with our current information. That's probably the easiest. Email works too, but I love the good old fashioned phone call. Whether it's scheduled or not. It's a
lost art. It is a lost art. I agree. Okay. Well, listen, thank you all very much. It was great to see you, and we'll see you guys soon.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ted.
Bye.